Now this is actually a pretty good question. We've talked earlier about the fact that you can use the Revolution for cotton and polyester and of course blended apparel. And so a common question that comes up is, well, how do you adjust that if you have a mix of one or different materials? He asked specifically, what about a garment that is 84% polyester and 16% spandex? What do you use? Do you use a film designed for polyester or for the spandex? Well, the answer is yes. That's a good tactic to go with to match it up with the bulk of what's in the fabric. In this case, talking about the Revolution, you have to remember that it's designed for not only polyester but also spandex and other films, and it's very thin and stretchable, as is Hot Mark. So it doesn't really matter, but you could use the Revolution for that material, knowing that you could set it for polyester in terms of your heat and temperature settings, and also be comfortable that it's going to work really well on the spandex because it's thin and very stretchable film. So that would be a good choice for that, but that's also a very good question.
And you mentioned earlier about the layering guide. In fact, I guess that was one of the handouts there. So help me out here. I guess depending on what materials you're using, there's a proper order between this. If you're using this material with that, then this one needs to go on first. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yes, it is, and that's a very good question. And the layering guide specifies, now with most materials, it's not that big a deal, but there are some, specifically films with a lot of metal, that really need to go on top. The metallic, for instance, that we featured earlier, that beautiful film I talked about, can be layered with things like Hot Mark or Hot Mark Revolution, but only if you put the metallic on last. If you put the metallic on the bottom, then it doesn't tend to work. So with those films, you have to basically layer it on top or as an accent or maybe outside, but you can't put those underneath something else like a regular PU film, and that is covered as in the layering guide, so that's a good thing to point out. We have a question from Deborah. She's referring to my earlier tip at the beginning of the presentation about adding some baby powder to the cut lines when you're weeding things like glitter or bling or the Galaxy film that's very stretchable. Her question is, will the powder affect the adhesive when you put that on your heat press? And that's a very good question. The first thing I'd say is don't put too much on. I usually use a very light sprinkle and I spread it around with my finger, so it's just a really light dusting, and it will accumulate only in the cut lines. So you don't want to actually bury it or put too much on there. A really light dusting is fine, but after you've weeded it, that's not going to affect the adhesive at all. It just kind of goes away and it doesn't have any lasting effect. And we have one other question, and I don't know if you want to deal with this one, Anthony, but it's kind of a logical question, but Robert is asking, does it matter what color shirt you press on?
100% opaque. That would be the best answer to the question. Our transfers are opaque. So to sum up the question, the color really should not and never be an issue.
Right.
It's the temperature of the Hot Mark Revolution product that really helps it become so versatile. You don't have to apply it at high temperature, thus preventing the ink to actually activate and having a chance for migration to actually occur, in polyester shirts in particular.